Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media. What's up, Kansas City? And today we're going to talk a little bit of politics on our political channel. And we have one of the council people. He's a candidate, but he's already in the seat, Mr. Kevin O'Neill. And he's going to talk about, or what I'm going to try to get him to talk about is what he's done over the past 4 years in that seat, and why he should be reelected, and some other things that he might have on his mind that he wants to let the general public and our community know, because he is running at large. So without any further ado, Councilman O'Neill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carlos. I appreciate being on here. I think the first question everybody, wants to ask is, why are you running? And, the first time I ran because I wanted to get some things done at City Hall after, I think I was appointed in 14 or 13 to a board. And I kind of started to learn how the city worked through that board. It was a PIEA, which is an abatement agency. And I got to know Lee Barnes, who was on that board with me, who is also a city councilman. And I kind of tapped into his knowledge and started learning quite a bit and what I could do. After 30 years as the owner of the Labor Beacon newspaper, I felt there were some things that could be changed in favor of better wages for people. So when I ran on a platform of helping working people. And when I got on council, I was lucky enough to be unopposed my first go around. And when I got on council, I worked to, number one, I wanted all the incentive agencies. I felt like any developer that got free money should pay a price for that. And that price to me was making sure that everybody on his job site got paid good wages. And it's the least we could ask for. So I put in a component to all the incentive agencies to have to pay prevailing wage. Secondly, I went on a lot of these job sites and saw there was some really bad actors, construction, third-party contractors, subcontractors that just didn't do their due diligence. They just hired, cheated in the payments. They cheated the contractors. They cheated the city in taxes. So I introduced a wage theft bill that would ensure that if they were caught, if contractors, generals were caught hiring subcontractors that were cheating, that they get in trouble and they could be actually prosecuted by the city. So those are two of the things that I was really proud of. The second thing I saw was how poorly paid our city employees were. And so I introduced several ordinances that helped increase their wages. So we're now, I think at one time we had a $13 an hour wage in some location, in some departments, and that is now closer to $17 or $16. So I felt very good about that. I think that's something we have to honor our employees, and we have to give them enough money to not have to do 2 jobs or 3 jobs to make ends meet. So that's kind of why I'm running. I want to keep that. I want to keep going with helping working people, because I think they need a voice on council, and that's what I think I've been.
I didn't know that you were in the media field per se.
30 years.
Yeah, well, that is probably an eye opener to some of the people that are watching this interview. What I would ask you, what do you think the challenges Kansas City has, and especially your district, for the next 4 years?
Well, I would say Kansas City in a whole. I think we have a lot of issues. We have housing issues, we have crime issues, we have violence issues, we have homelessness issues, housing issues. And I always come down to the same thing. After 30 years in the newspaper business, advocating for working people, I found that the one sure thing that can help people is a good. And I think the root of every problem we have starts with a good job. And we have to bring more good jobs to the people of the city. And I think we do that by these union jobs that pay $30 to $50 an hour with great benefits, retirement, and all that. We have to bring those, and we have to get more people, more underserved people. We have to get those jobs to the underserved communities. And that's one of the things that I've been working on with several of my colleagues, to get more job fairs, to get more people connected to those jobs. And I really do think that that's the genesis of most problems is people, if you're not making enough money, you fall down and you can't get back up because, the weight of that debt just kills you.
Hey, tell me this. Do you think the city has been judicious in their spending of the taxpayers' dollars when it comes to this development? I haven't really talked to anyone like you on this issue besides Crosby Kemper that was laying it out, that these dollars were being spent, the TIF dollars and different dollars with these large corporations, and we're giving them these abatements and different things. And then the next thing you know, 3 years later, they selling their company to another company. Do you think that has had an impact on the monies that have gone to them that could have gone into housing and different projects? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess I understand what you're saying, and in fact, I'm a commissioner on the Port KC, and we had this discussion yesterday because we give out abatements to developers, and I understand there is a but for, would this be built but for these incentives? Is there a financial analysis that actually shows the value of adding money to this? But I want to go back to the TIFs, because one of the arguments is what this money could have been spent somewhere else and been more productive, right? But at the end of the day, this money isn't real if it's not in the TIF, right? I mean, you're abating taxes, but the but-for analysis tells you it wouldn't be built if it wasn't for these abatements. So if it's not built, then you're not going to get those tax dollars anyway. So it's a false argument because there is no money there to start with. Now, could there be, and I honestly believe that the Housing Trust Fund dollars, the 50 million that we just bonded, is a great start. But I'm going to tell you right now, that money is going to be gone in 10 minutes and nobody's going to know what happened to it. And it's going to be, it's going to fill some gaps, but it's $50 million in a world where, one project can cost $200 million. So I worry that we don't have a sustainable housing path forward. That's a lot. Sorry. It's just
hold it. It's mind-boggling because what you're saying, the general public doesn't. Most of them really don't understand. And 50 million seems like a lot of money. 100 million seems like a lot of money until you've been dealing with budgets that 100 million might only do a quarter of the project.
Right.
And their matching funds and all of that, it's right. Real complicated. The words you use, basically it melts right in. You like, which way did it go?
Right. Melissa Robinson brought up a point, and I thought it was very, very aware of her. She fights very hard for her district, and in the 3rd district, there's a really gap between good housing, average housing, and low income housing, right? And it seems like we're always trying to add low income housing to the 3rd district. And her point was, look, we need market rate housing. We need luxury housing. We want to be every neighborhood should have the same opportunities. And if you continue just to build low income housing in a district, it's going to become a low income district. and we have to build them up in more ways than just one. So there's so many stories.
Simmons I'm the cutoff king, by the way. Kelvin Simmons, he's got a project down there on 19th Street.
Right.
I don't get out much, Kevin, but it's like every month or what have you, I might drive down that. And I was down there the other day. That thing is sky high.
Right.
And when I had him on our business show, he was talking about the same thing, that we got to get more market rate,
right,
more diverse. But do you really think that the establishment, and that goes with y'all, but the downtown council and all of that? I've been in Kansas City for 40 something years, I think about 40 years. And I don't really see how the city fathers and the people really get serious about the 3rd and 5th district. I've seen different types of reports because they keep managing from the top down. And these reports are switching gears, are almost like the school shootings. Oh, it's horrible, horrible, horrible. But 50 years passed, 30 years passed. What have you really done about it?
Right.
And you at large candidates and serving, you getting the bird's eye view of it. But I'm going to switch gears and ask you about that Northland, because that Northland is growing. Boy, it's growing really fast. And you have a lot of Hispanic and a more diverse population there. Give our audience the 411. And I've heard this said in other conversations that they treat the Northland like they treat the 3rd and 5th district.
Stepchildren, aren't we all?
Yeah.
And I've worked very hard at trying. I was disappointed in the redistricting of the city council districts earlier last year, only because I feel like the vertical or the horizontal switch in districts was a disservice to the Northland. I really like the fact that Clay County and Platte County were somewhat separated. And so I was able to, in the 1st district, work with primarily the North Kansas City School District, the EDC, the Clay County EDC, and we worked a lot. And we spent most of our money south of Berry Road. Now everything is north of Berry Road is the 1st district. My issue with that is that all the work really needs a lot of the Northland, north of Berry Road is newer and greenfields, right? That's where all the development is occurring. So from that perspective, I'm excited because I get to work with a lot of the developers and how we're going to develop the Northland. But unfortunately, I think now that you have Berry Road and south to the river, you've lost about $5 million in funding for infrastructure projects, because now PIAC is going to be separated, whereas we used to have two PIAC funds, 1st and 2nd district, going south of Berry Road. Now we only have one, and that's unfortunate, because I think that most of the infrastructure work that we need is occurring south of Vivian Road or between Vivian Road and Berry Road.
I want to switch up real quick.
Sure.
They've been talking about this downtown stadium, and I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks, rewatching other people's programs, they were talking about north of the river possibility with hosting a stadium. Talk about that, and how do you have any feelings about that?
Yeah, when I initially heard that, I thought, well, that's just people playing, trying to get some publicity and trying to, make it look like there's options. I've always thought that the main location is the East Village over on 9th Street. I have no inside information on that. I've just, from every indication, every conversation I've had, that seems to be the favored. And I think the Royals have even said publicly that's their favored location. However, about a year ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and I can't think of the guy's name, but they're a very wealthy family here in Kansas City, and I can't think of their names immediately. But they bought up most of the downtown North Kansas City. So all of a sudden you have one landowner that can negotiate the kind of deal and that has the money and financial wherewithal to possibly pursue this. I always say billionaires probably spend more time with billionaires than we do, right? We don't hang out with a lot of billionaires. So there's that option, there's that possibility that exists. I don't believe it's real, but there is that possibility.
I don't know, because like I said, I've been here for a minute. Anything is damn possible around this joint.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
They were saying that Sprint couldn't exist without an anchor tenant, but being creative and not, having thinking forward. Right. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know who bought that or how that was going, but I do know that money talks.
You bet.
And I know that the people with the money, they want something downtown,
sure.
Close to downtown, and so.
Yeah, I mean, and keep in mind that you've got the privateers who own Mark I own that the old KC building, and that's been in the news too. That they're talking about. There's been suggestions that that's a player tearing the old printing presses down for the KC Star right over I-70 or 635, and building a lid there.
Right. I told you I was watching. I watched that program, The British Guy.
Oh yeah. Nick Haynes.
Yeah, and then Eric is on there, fellow journalist per se. Right. And they really informative on what's going on. But again, I don't see how they do all of that stuff. And my community is really not benefiting from the jobs. Or I mentioned that 19th Street project, and someone told me yesterday they didn't see no Black people down there building that building. And one of the key things in your conversation from the jump, and nobody wants to deal with this, all our problems start because we don't have good employment that are paying good jobs. And I don't care, that's across the board.
Well, and to back that up, when we have prevailing wage on a project, we also have MBE and WBE goals and workforce goals. And that's important too, because just because you hire an MBE doesn't mean he's going to hire, all sorts of minorities to work for him. So, all you've done, you've transferred some wealth, but you haven't transferred any job, wealth.
Hey,
and I do think that's important. And we have to be more cognizant of our workforces and diversifying.
Kevin, cut off King again. Did you know that I used to be a general contractor?
I did not.
I had the second, or at worst, third largest general contracting firm minority in Kansas City back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, wow.
And all the castle down there on Vine, I blocked that up for $100,000 for the city. Two things that came into mind. Back then, the Davis-Bacon Act and all of that, all right, on that particular job, one of my subcontractors wasn't paying the wages, but I didn't know it.
Right.
But the city held me responsible for it. And back then, that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
All right. So now, again, because you do an MBE contract with a Black company, most Black companies can't really afford to hire other Black companies because the damn competitiveness the supply and all of the different things that go along with that, that one company might make something, but it doesn't trickle down.
Right.
And
No, I agree.
hold it, but I'm saying most of the politicians and people that I have talked to over the 30 years, they don't see that correlation.
Right.
The other last thing I'd like to say, and this is your interview, I don't really understand MBE because white people don't have to say that they white. And black people, MBE and all of that, from my perspective, how to keep you out of the workforce. End the story on that.
Well, I mean, the only thing I think there is a definite, there is a component there that needs to make sure that people are fair. And I hate to say that in the 2023, but it's true. I mean, you know, sometimes when you don't put rules in place, people just do what they want and they hang out. You know, it's kind of like we talked about billionaires. You know, billionaires hang out with billionaires. White contractors hang out with white subcontractors. You know, all those things can be very easily, you know, all of a sudden that 20%, you know, inclusion goes down to 15, 10, 5, you know, because they're dealing with their friends.
Oh, and not just that, because in that thing, when MBE first came out, I had to go down to Jeff City. I testified about, because they didn't want to give the 10%.
Right.
And I asked the committee, I said, you ever been in any place that you were the only a white person and all the other people were people of color? And I asked, how did you feel? Didn't you feel uncomfortable? I said, that's how we feel when we come
Every time.
room. And then you don't want to give us 10%. And once they give you the 10%, then they put the WMBE.
Right.
And I'm saying the people with the money are going to find out how to pose as poor people or whatever and get the money. And then whatever that bill, and I think it's it's our politicians' fiduciary responsibility when they say that they were representing the people to do something about that. Now, if they're saying that they're not representing the people and they're representing the corporate community, that's one thing. But I'm not being biased, but I think you're representing the people because of the issues that you pointed out, and we didn't have any agenda or any subject matter before we came on the air.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, I think you can represent both. You know, I want development, but I want good paying jobs. But I'm not gonna accept your word as a general contractor that you're going to do it right. I want checks and balances, and I want to know that you're not hiring some labor broker that's bringing over 10 guys that making $10 an hour, and you don't know about it until the end. That's not fair to the general contractor, because you got ones you can trust and you got ones you can't. And I just want checks and balances.
I'm going with cowboy Ronnie Reagan. Trust but verify.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm saying, hey, Ronnie was no dummy.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah,
He knew.
you know, and I like your comment on I'm for the people, but I understand that I have to work with the corporate community to make all of this happen.
You bet.
So in closing, what would you have to say to your public?
You know, I think one of the responsibilities of an at-large candidate is to represent the whole city. I think my opponents are pretty parochial. They live and they've spent all of their time up north. I've lived part of my life in Kansas City. I went to local high schools at Hogan and grew up on Troost, and I've lived north for the last 15 years. You know, I think you have to have people that understand the entire city, not just one section of it. I love the Northland, but I also love the Southland. Hell, I grew up at the Starlight, the zoo, you know, a lot of those places, the plaza, everything. Kansas City is a big city. We have 500,000 plus people. We have 315 lanes of roads, or 315 square miles. We have 6,000 miles of roads. We have all these things that need, deferred maintenance. We have to understand as at-large council members that you've got to look at the whole city. You can't just be for one district or two districts. So I think I'm the most qualified to follow that agenda.
All right, I think that's sufficient on closing. As we always say here at Cascade Media Group, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.